Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining our February onX Hunt 101 Masterclass. We'll get going here in just a few minutes. We're going to give it a little bit of time to let everybody get signed in and get settled. While we're waiting, just a few housekeeping items. Your audio and video are turned off, so don't worry if you have any noise behind you or anything like that. We can't see you or hear you. If you do have any questions, please drop them in the Q&A bar down below. We do have a member of our customer support team that's answering those. We'll try to answer as many as we can. We're also going to take some time for some Q&A, over the air on camera after the regular presentation. The chat box is there, kind of more just to chime in and say, hey, coming into you from Michigan or Pennsylvania, wherever you are. We're not really able to answer questions from the chat. Just the way the chat works is a lot harder to keep track of and things like that. So make sure you're putting them in the Q&A. This class is being recorded, so if you have to dip out early or you want to go back and review something, it is recorded. We'll send you an email tomorrow with the link, the YouTube link to that recording so that you can go back and watch it, or you can send it to friends or anything like that. We're also going to be giving away some onX gear at the end of the class, but you do have to be in attendance to enter that giveaway. So make sure you stick around to the end if you can to get entered for that. Anything else I'm forgetting as far as housekeeping?
I think you're pretty good.
Awesome. Couple of introductions. My name's Jack Hedlund. I'm part of the onX Hunt marketing team here. I'll kind of be your guide through the 101 today. I'm joined by Connor.
Yeah, Connor, I'm on the customer service team. Have been for about 2 years. Originally from the Midwest, but figuring that out here in the Western states.
Awesome. Speaking of customer service, we do have, obviously I'm biased. I think our customer service team is second to none. If you have any questions that are like specific to your account, by that I mean anything to do with billing, resetting a password, renewal dates, things like that, that's a bit beyond of the scope of this class. We're not quite able to dig into accounts right now. So if you do have questions specific to your account, send us an email to help@onxmaps.com. That's our regular customer support email. They'll get to that and get back to you tomorrow. Our goal is always to answer any customer contact within 24 business hours of receiving it. So if you shoot us an email tonight, you can expect a response tomorrow sometime. And with that, let's get into our agenda for the day. We're going to start off by talking about the different membership options of the app. There are kind of 3 different levels you can be at. We'll run through what differentiates those, what kind of features you get with each one, what you're able to do as a basic, a premium, or an elite member. Then we'll get into more of the meat and potatoes of the app, talk about the different map layers, using the app while we're offline, different tools, finding your location, using the compass, base map, doing a search, and then we'll have some time for some Q&A and the giveaway at the end there. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to stop sharing here, and Connor is going to run us through membership options while I pull up the map.
Yeah. So there's 4 different real levels that you can be at, 3 of which are going to be paid memberships for onX Hunt. The first one, that unpaid membership, is just our basic user level. That gives you access to the map, the topographic map and the satellite imagery, but you aren't able to really use any of the layers or any of the tools that would be accessible to you with a paid membership. From there, those 3 paid levels, the quality of the data is all the same between them, just depends on what you're getting access to. So you've got your premium single state, it's going to be $30 per year. It's exactly like it sounds, giving you access to just one state's data, all of the layers for that particular state. Then from there, we have a 2-state premium plan. That one's $45 per year. Same type access as that 1-state plan. Just get to do 2 states if you do hunt out of state, just one location, bouncing around year to year. From there, you've got our elite plan, and that's going to give you access to everything that we have. So it's all 50 states data, all of our Canadian data as well. And then there's some additional benefits to that one that we'll end up covering here in a little bit. Some different imagery options and access to our elite benefits. This is going to be like pro deals with other industry partners of ours. So it's like Vortex, Federal Ammunition, You get access to our hunt research tool, which we do have a class coming up for.
Next week, I believe that is our kind of kicking off our hunt research tools. So if you're interested in apps, keep an eye out for that class.
Yeah. And that is pretty much it for the memberships.
Awesome. Let's get into the app. I'll get that pulled up. So what I'm going to be demoing first is the onX Hunt app on a mobile device. This is going to be on a tablet, on an iPad. It's going to look the same if you're on an iPhone. On an Android phone will look very similar. There are a few small differences between them, but by and large, it's going to look the same. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit here. When you pull up the app, it should look something similar to this. You should see hopefully a dot with your location there, and then you should see some different land designations if you have a paid membership. If you don't have a paid membership, you're not going to have access to that private and government lands data like Connor talked about. But what we're showing you here, if you have a premium or an elite membership, should look somewhat similar. Of course, you may or may not be located in Missoula, Montana, so it's going to look different based on that. But if I just move the map around a little bit, you start to see some of the different colors on the map. If I zoom in a little bit, you start to see some of the private lands data. The way you can activate this data, if you have a paid membership and you're not seeing it, in the lower left-hand corner, I'm going to tap on where it says Hunt Map Layers. This is kind of the heart and soul of the onX Hunt app, is our layers and the data within there. At the top of my Map Layers menu, you see I have the state of Montana turned on. I'm located in Montana. That's the one I have on. Below Montana, if I pull this menu up, you see some people call them folders or layer collections. Those are the ones titled Current Conditions, Land and Access, Road, Trails and Wrecks, Trees, Crops and Cover, and Wildlife layers. Those are available to you whether you have a premium or an elite membership. All of those layers are going to be nationwide. So even if you have, let's say, a premium membership for the state of Missouri, you can still turn on Current Conditions, Land and Access, Road, Trails and Wrecks, etc. And that's going to show you data nationwide. So we sometimes, some of these layers that we'll get into later, we hear from people that want to talk about like, hey, I'm looking for the wildfire data and I don't see it under Missouri. It's because it's a nationwide layer, so it's in one of those other folders. Okay, so right now I have one state turned on. If I have a premium 2-state membership or an elite membership, I can turn on more than one state. The way to do that is to scroll down and you see I have all 50 states and Canada listed below alphabetically. Montana's at the top because I have it turned on. But if I wanted to turn on Missouri, for example, we'll stick with that one. I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to tap on that little slider button on the right. Now you see Missouri has moved up to the top there. If I scroll all the way up, I see Missouri and Montana both listed there. So if you're an elite member, you're saying, what the heck, I should have all 50 states. Why aren't they turned on? That's how you turn on additional states. We just recommend only turning on the ones that you need, because otherwise, if you turn on all 50, it can kind of slow the app down. It's just a lot of data to turn on. I typically will have, maybe a couple states turned on, usually not more than 2 or 3. Anything 5 or less, we haven't really seen any issues with. But let's dive into these folders, these collections. I'm going to open up Montana, just tapped on Montana there on my screen. And now I see a screen that looks like this. Now, these are all the layers that we have for the state of Montana. If you have a different state, you're going to see different layers there. At least some of them will be different. Every state is going to have private lands. It's going to have government lands. I think every state but one is going to have some version of hunting districts. It's going to either be called, it might not be called hunting districts. It might be called GMUs, hunting zones, hunting areas, something like that. Everyone calls it something different. You're going to see a possible access as well. And then beyond that, those are all kind of state-specific layers, like you see Montana block management, hunting districts portions. Every state's going to be different based on different programs they have and different data that they make available. So we'll get to those in a bit. You see, I have the private lands, the government lands, and the hunting districts turned on. You can turn those off just by tapping on those slider switches. So if I turn off private lands and government lands, you see my map loses a lot of the detail. It just looks kind of like a basic satellite map. It's got a few, I do have some other layers turned on. That's giving me some information, but beyond that, it's not really giving me what I want onX for and what most people kind of get into onX for, which is that private and government lands. So if you're not seeing those layers, if you're saying, hey, what happened? I lost my government lands or I lost my private lands. First thing to do, open up your state folder, make sure those layers are turned on. They're easy to turn off by mistake. So all you have to do, you can see my map just changed there. You can turn them off and on just like that.
And one quick thing to mention with that as well, when you turn on a new state, the private lands, the gov lands, and hunting districts, if they're available, will all turn on automatically. All those extra layers would be things you manually have to go and turn on if you want that information.
Yep. So just those top three are the ones that turn on automatically when you either purchase a membership or open up a state folder. One I do want to highlight that you see might look a little bit different is the hunting districts. You see below my slider switch there, it says the number 16, and under the name, it also says view options. There's a few layers that have that option there where it says view options, because in Montana, we have different districts for different species. Most states are going to be like this. Wyoming is the one we hear about the most because they split out their big game species all into different hunt areas. So we always hear about it. I'm guessing we heard about it a bunch in January before the elk draw.
Yep.
We'll probably hear about it a bunch in like May before I think that's May is their deadline for deer and antelope. Anyway, if you're looking at your map and you're saying, man, these districts, these boundaries are wrong. onX has it wrong. We hear that fairly often. Your stuff doesn't match up with what Game and Fish has. Double check that you've got the correct district selected. You can see on my map right now, I have the deer and elk hunt district turned on. Most states we're going to default to either the deer units or maybe they just have one for big game. We try to do whatever the most popular, animal popular pursuit in that state is. That's what's turned on by default. But 2 months from today, spring turkey and black bear opens up in Montana. So I'm going to turn on my spring turkey hunt district layer. So as I zoom out, you can see those different turkey districts. Those are going to be those green lines on my map there. You see Montana, we have a handful of different districts, okay, for spring turkey. Just to give you a sense of what this looks like, I'm going to go back to deer and elk. You can see Montana looks quite a bit different there. So that's always something to check. Make sure you have the proper sub-layer turned on there for your hunt districts and your hunt areas. Couple other ones I just want to mention real quick. The possible access layer, we get questions on that sometimes, what that means. If you're wondering what a layer shows, you can always tap on details. That's going to give you a little bit more information there. So possible access is private land that may be open to public access. The most common example of this is going to be timber company land. A lot of timber companies, Weyerhaeuser or we used to have Plum Creek or Stimson or some other ones around here, depending on where you are. They may or may not allow public access. I know in the Pacific Northwest, Oregon, Washington, a lot of hunting takes place on timber company land. Sometimes they charge like a daily use fee or a season pass or something. Around here in Montana, a lot of it is just open, abide by the rules, but you can go out there and fish or hike or whatever, hunt whatever you want to do there. Not whatever you want to do there. They have set rules, of course. But it's private, it's not national forest, but they allow public access. So that's a way for you to kind of, try to find some of these areas that otherwise you might not know are open to you. Let me see if I can find an example here. So here's one. This is some land trust land. It's got that green slash mark through it. You can kind of see if I zoom out a little bit. That's denoting the possible access. So groups like the Nature Conservancy, local land trust timber companies, private land, may or may not be open. Double check with them and double check to make sure there's not, special regulations. Sometimes they have, no campfires allowed, no overnight camping, no recreational shooting, things along those lines. But that's another great opportunity to find some access that you might not otherwise know is there. And then speaking of finding access to private land, the block management layer, that is the state walk-in program for Montana. I believe it's over half the states now have some sort of public access to private lands. Some states call it Access Yes. North Dakota is Plots Land. Kansas is WEHA, which is fun to say. Walk-in hunter access. Everyone calls it something different. These are typically going to be private lands. A lot of times it's agriculture lands or maybe timberland that the landowner enrolls in this program. Usually there's some sort of tax break or stipend or per use payment that they receive. And then hunters are allowed to hunt on it. A lot of times it's non-motorized access, walk-in only. Some of them do allow that. So for example, I'll show you what that looks like on the map here. In Montana, this is one that is inactive right now. So we do show the ones, because it's not hunting season right now. So you can't, or at least it's not, big game season. There are a few seasons that are open still in Montana, but this block management area is closed for the season. So if you see one that's kind of gray like this, we do this to kind of show you planning purposes of this was a past block management area. They kind of redo those contracts every year. It's no guarantee it will be next year, but it might aid in your planning. What a current one looks like is this one right here with a black border and red dots. So that's what it'll look like in your state if they have a walk-in access area and that program is currently open and you're able to utilize those lands. So that's what you're looking for on the map there to find those areas. All right. Didn't mean to close that. Moving on from Montana, we're just going to roll through these real quick. The current conditions, land and access, these are, like I said, nationwide layers. There's a lot in here. My recommendation, because we don't have time to go through all of these folders tonight in this 101, it's a bit beyond the scope of the class. Go in and check these out, tap on them, open them up. You have things like active wildfire, drought data, things like that. A lot of these layers are ones that I use for scouting purposes. I might not always want turned on, but that's kind of one of my tips for learning the onX Hunt app. The more time you spend in it, the more familiar you're going to become. It's kind of like getting a new bow. You're going to want to shoot it well before archery season. You're not going to want to buy it the week before and then, or buy it in February and leave it in the case until September. You're not going to be as familiar with it as you could be. onX is the same. The more time you spend in there, the more familiar you're going to become and the more ready you're going to be come hunting season. So there's a bunch of different layers in here. Like I said, these are all nationwide. You've got your current conditions, land and access. These are the ones that I usually have turned on, that you see turned on currently: wilderness areas, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service hunt areas, and then some of our ones that we produced with NGO partners, Ducks Unlimited, Pheasants Forever, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. Those are kind of cool just to see, if you're a member of those organizations, where your money's going. It highlights projects that they've worked on, lands that they've acquired that have maybe been made public, places they've done habitat restoration, wetland restoration in the case of Ducks Unlimited, things like that. The roads, trails, and rec are kind of overlooked as well, especially that motorized roads and trails layer. I'm going to talk about that one a little bit because I've had a number of buddies I've been hunting with that didn't know this layer was a thing. And I've been talking about, hey, we need to go up and hit this road and we can drive over here. And they're just like, man, what are you looking at? So the motorized roads and trails layers are going to be these purple and white roads and trails on my map. They're typically going to be on Forest Service or other public lands. So these are super nice because those roads are going to be pretty well maintained for the most part. Okay. They're generally going to be more open to travel than, if you're looking at my map, Some of these other dotted lines, those other like white dotted lines are going to be what you might call a 2-track road, where they are, especially here in Western Montana, basically areas where there was a logging operation at one point. Most of those roads are kind of remnants of that logging. They may be passable, they may not be. Some of them are great and you can drive a truck down them. Some of them have 20-foot tall spruce trees growing out of them because they haven't been driven on since the last, logging operation went through. But these purple and white ones, if you tap on them, that's going to pull up this query card, is what we call it. That's going to give you the information about an area of the map. And that's going to tell you, you can see there where it says motorized roads and trails, it gives me an open and closed date. Now this road is open year round. Some of them will close seasonally. So you don't want to be the person who makes a big plan to go out on a hunt and drive out there and come to a closed gate because it doesn't open up for another couple of months or something like that. So plan ahead, double check those, make sure that road is open. That reminds me of another point I should have mentioned earlier. If you ever wonder what anything on the map means, just tap on it. That's what we call querying the map. That's going to pull up information about whatever you've tapped on. So if you're wondering, what does this green land mean? It's national forest land. If you're wondering what this color means, that's Flathead Reservation, tribal land. And if you're wondering what yellow means, that's BLM. Okay, once you do it enough, it kind of becomes second nature and you're able to just look at blue state, yellow's BLM, green's Forest Service, etc. But if you're ever wondering, hey, what's this mean? Tapping on it. Same thing with private lands. If you're trying to find more information, I'm just going to pick this person's parcel. Private land information, you can get the name and the tax address. So that's going to give you the address where they received their mail. It's not necessarily the physical address of that parcel. So if you're going to try to type that into, a mapping app for turn-by-turn directions, might not get you there. It might take you to somebody's house. But that is useful for trying to contact a landowner, for example, for trying to get permission to hunt. You can send a letter. You can use the tax address and the owner name to maybe search in the white pages, search in the phone book or something, do an internet search, try to get a phone number, something like that. That is a question we get sometimes from people is, do we have phone numbers in the app? We do not include phone numbers, and largely that's out of respect for the landowner. I've heard from ranchers in Montana who field dozens of phone calls a day during hunting season of people trying to get access to hunt their property. If that was me, I would probably unplug my phone or, put my cell phone on do not disturb or something like that. If I was getting that many calls a day, you can imagine how that would increase if we had landowner phone numbers in there. So for right now, we don't include that in there. Things may change in the future, but no phone numbers. You got your tax address and your name. Oftentimes you can find a phone number or get in contact with somebody from that information.
And I have one thing I want to add with layers, just because it's often something that we hear quite a bit about. If you could turn on the, which layer I'm talking about, I'm blanking on the name. Forest visitor maps.
There we go.
So our map layers add extra data to the map that you see, and some of those are going to substantially change how the map looks. There's kind of two ways that this can happen, is turning on layers accidentally, like the forest visitors map, which is going to lay that paper map over the top, or just having too many layers turned on. There's too much data to understand what you're looking at. We hear from customers that are having issues with that a lot. If you're ever looking at the map and it doesn't look quite right, it's good to just jump into those different categories in that layers menu, start toggling things on and off, trying to figure out kind of what's affecting the map. And you'll usually find whichever one needs to be turned off to get that looking normal again for you.
Yep. And that's kind of to my point earlier of just spending time in the app. There's nothing you can break. There's nothing you can really turn on that just is gonna, wreck the app or anything that's undoable. Pretty much everything you do in the app can be undone. So don't be afraid of, I heard a guy one time say, just tap all the buttons, tap everything. I mean, pay attention to what you're tapping so you can undo it later. But you can turn all these on and you're like, man, that really does obscure the map, doesn't it? That doesn't look very useful to me because I have too much turned on. But all you got to do is go back in, turn it off, and there we are again. So we're going to move on from layers now. There's a bunch more layers in the app. In the interest of time, so that we're not here all night, we are going to move on to talking about offline maps. So you might be saying, Jack, this is all well and good, but I hunt where there's no cell service, where there's limited cell service. This app's no use to me. Au contraire, we've created this feature. It's called Offline Maps that allows you to download a portion of the map with the layers, with a few exceptions. But by and large, all the layers can be saved for offline use as well. So all you need to do, if I zoom out here, I'm just going to go to a new area I've never been. Let's say this is where I want to go. And this is where I want to hunt. So wilderness area, may not be very good cell service there. So lower left-hand corner, excuse me, I'm going to tap offline maps. Then I'm going to tap new map. Whatever is within this red box that shows up on my screen is what is going to be saved for offline use. So if I zoom out a little bit, I can kind of change the size of it. You are limited by the resolution to how big your map can be. And by resolution, I mean the imagery resolution of your satellite base map. By default, medium is going to be selected. I could go to, and that is map detail. So medium detail, medium resolution. I can go to high resolution, where I'm going to have more detailed imagery, but you can see my map gets much, much smaller. That's because there's more data included within that map, more imagery, more pixels. So that's about the size of the map. Yours might look a little bit different as far as those dimensions. It's going to be kind of dependent on the screen dimensions of your device. So if yours is a little bit different than mine, that's fine. I'm on an iPad here. If you're on a phone, it might be a touch different. If I zoom out here and I go to a low detail or low resolution, you see that's quite large. So these are useful maps to save, these large ones, but I wouldn't use them kind of as my go-to map. I use the medium most of the time because you can see it gives me a pretty wide area, but I still have good enough imagery resolution, me personally, for my style of hunting and the information I need. I like having a bigger map just so I don't have to save a bunch of these really small maps. If I'm hunting an area in the Midwest, where I grew up in Minnesota, we have a family deer camp in Minnesota, northern part of the state, and we have our stand set. We kind of have our areas we hunt, and we're not really driving around to different parts of the unit or different parts of the state to hunt. I'll save one of these high detail maps because I don't need anything bigger. I don't need more coverage. For most of my hunting in Montana and in the West, I use these medium ones, still gives me enough resolution. And then I do save most of the state in a low detail map as a backup. So I might save some smaller maps for, hey, these are the areas I've scouted out where I want to go hunting. And just in case, you know, maybe that area is no good. Maybe my e-scouting didn't work and there's no animals there. I need to go somewhere else. At least I have this bigger map. It's not going to be as detailed imagery, but I have my unit boundaries. I have my property lines. I've got my roads and trails. I have all that information so I can at least, you know, stay legal, make sure I'm in the right unit, not trespassing, things like that. So let's get into actually saving a map here, shall we? I'm gonna get it set here. So I can still move this around. I'm just using one finger on the map to pull this around to where I want it to be. Let's say that's where I want it to be. If I pull up on that card, I get the full view here. I do recommend naming your maps, especially when you get to have 10, 15, 20, even more maps saved. If they all just have the generic name, it's hard to remember, oh yeah, I got a map saved there, or no, I don't. So give them a name. I'm just going to name this one name because it's just a test one. Personally, I usually name mine either for like a landmark, maybe a creek drainage I'm hunting or a nearby mountain range or something like that. Or I'll save it based on, like last September, I went on a sage grouse hunt and I saved a whole bunch of different maps because it was a big area. We were driving around looking for sage grouse habitat. I just named them all like sage grouse 2023 and named them all that just so I knew where I had those maps. So that if I go back next year, I know, hey, I got the sage grouse area saved. Name them whatever you want, whatever makes sense to you. The only wrong thing to do is to not name them at all. Then all we have to do is hit save, and that's going to start downloading on my device here. And you see a green box that appeared on my screen. That is the boundary of that offline map. So if I want to save a bigger area than this, all I have to do is hit new map. And now you can see how I can kind of line that up with my previous one. And some people refer to this as stitching them or quilting them together. You can kind of create a grid pattern, make a 4x4 grid or whatever you need. If I zoom out, you can see I've got some different maps saved all over the state. That's what all those green boxes are. You see one map that looks a little bit different. You see this one's got a red and white stripe around it. There's a couple of ways you could get into this scenario. Most commonly is probably by getting a new device or having multiple devices logged into the same account. So let's say that I saved a whole bunch of maps on my phone. I decided it's time to get a new phone. When I download the onX app onto that new phone and log in with my email address and password, it's going to have all of my waypoints in there, and it's going to have a bunch of outlines that look like this. Because your account remembers you had a map saved there, but that actual data has not been downloaded to your device's storage. So you could end up in a situation like this. If I scroll down, you see there's one of these maps that looks a little bit different. The one titled Bob Marshall doesn't have a green check mark next to it. Your offline maps that have green check marks are good to go. They're downloaded onto this device. They have that arrow pointed down. They are not downloaded onto that device. So again, this could be that I got a new phone. It could be that I've got a tablet and I have a phone and I saved a bunch of maps on my tablet. When I pull it up on my phone, they're not going to be downloaded to that device's storage. I still have to do that on that device. To download it, the easiest way is just to tap that arrow, and you can see it's going to start downloading that right now. So it's a good thing to double check. Anytime you get a new device, download the maps that you need on there, and then just double check, especially if you don't use the app, if you're kind of infrequently using it, or it's February now, you might not be using it for a couple months if you're a turkey hunter, or even longer, if you're not hunting until next fall. Double check beforehand to make sure you have your maps downloaded. Make sure they've got that green box and the green check mark around them. Last thing on offline maps, you see a lot of these say update available on them. Actually, every one of them except the ones we just downloaded say that. What that means is some data in that area has changed. Most commonly, that's going to be your property ownership. Something has changed there. In a state like Montana, where most of these maps are, we're able to update property ownership information. I think we do it on a monthly cadence, maybe even faster than that. I believe so. Montana is one of the best states for that data. Other states, that's a question I was going to talk about later. We might as well talk about it now. Property ownership updates can be anywhere from every month to every quarter to every year. We can dive into that a little bit later. But something's changed in that map. Could be imagery, could be a trail has changed, some sort of data. Your map is still going to work if it says update available. We sometimes hear that from people. Man, I was driving out, it said update available. I had to go pull over and find some Wi-Fi to update it. You don't have to. If you're driving out hunting Saturday morning and you see update available, man, go hunting. Don't let it bother you. Your map's still going to work. It just means something in that map has changed. I usually will update mine like Friday morning. I'm sitting at work at my desk. I go through and update all of those. The way to update them, there's a couple different ways. You can just tap on the green circle or tap on that check mark. That will update them. If you want to do all of them, in the top right corner of this menu, tap those ellipses. And then you can hit update all maps. I'm not going to do it right now, but that will update all of them. Do it when you have Wi-Fi is what is our recommendation. Do it when you have some time. They will take a few minutes to download. Good thing to do every once in a while. I probably do it more than most because I work at onX and I'll just pull it out and set it on my desk and hit update. If you're not hunting until September, man, wait until August, or wait until, shortly before your hunt or something like that. Don't wait until the night before, just in case something would go wonky and they wouldn't download or something. That's rare, but technology. So do it when you have the chance, but don't sweat it if you forget and you're heading out hunting. Don't let it ruin your hunt or anything like that. Anything I'm forgetting on offline maps?
No, I think we're pretty good there.
Awesome. Moving on. We're going to talk about some of the different map tools within the app. I'm going to move the map back to our location here. I'm going to zoom in a bit. Now the center icon along the bottom of my screen is titled Tools. If I tap on that, you see all the tools that are available to you. The most common one that I use, that most people use, are your waypoints. Now, there's a couple different ways to mark a waypoint on the map. And a waypoint is just simply a spot on the map that I want to remember for later. It could be anything from a tree stand to where I parked the truck, to where I saw a buck rub, to, I don't know, it could be my favorite brewery or something like that. Whatever you want to mark. One way to mark a waypoint is to tap that button along the top row that says Add Waypoint. That's going to put one kind of right in the center of my screen there. Actually, I'm going to undo that because there's a better way to show this. There we go. It's just going to put a generic waypoint in the middle of the map there, just like offline maps. That's my mouse control. I didn't need to do that. Just like offline maps. Recommend name. I didn't know that had the haptics sound turned on still. Didn't want that. Oh, well, hopefully that's not coming through too loud on the computer there for you folks. I'm going to rename it, just giving it a name here. You can change the icon. I think we have 90 or so different icons here. So whatever makes sense to you, whatever you want to remember, hey, I was out scouting for turkeys and I saw a gobbler there. So I'm going to make it that icon. You can change the color, which is something I recommend doing as well. That's one of the ways that I organize my waypoints. I think I have 1,500 waypoints or so on my account, something like that. If I left them all red X's, I wouldn't know what they meant. In fact, if you look at my map right now, I probably have less than 5 red X's because periodically I go through and delete them. Because if I just mark something as a red X and don't change the name a couple months later, a year later, I don't know what that is. I don't know what I saw there. It was something important enough to mark a waypoint, but I didn't help future Jack remember what it is. So I'm going to make this a gobbler. I'm going to change the color. Let's say that all of my turkey icons are yellow. That's how I organize my waypoints by species, and then I change the color. So all of my turkey waypoints are one color. All of my elk waypoints are a color. All of my fishing spots are another color. You get the idea. Another way people at the office do it is by year. So they might make, and say 2024, all of my waypoints are going to be green. And 2023, they were all blue. 2022, they were all purple. So that they can begin to see changes over the years. Or I can see, hey man, there was a lot of elk wallows in this area 2 years ago, but last year there wasn't so many. This year they're over here. Again, the only wrong way to do this is to really not have a system. Whatever makes sense to you. I'm so deep into this now that when I look at my map, I don't even have to look at the icons. I know those are elk spots, those are bear spots, those are deer spots. When I look at somebody else's map, I look at that and I'm like, really? You guys are finding turkeys there? I'm like, no, those aren't turkey icons. I use this color for this. It's like, duh, right? But it's so like second nature in my mind right now because I've been doing it so long. So give it a name, set the icon, change the color. If you want, you can add photos. I'm not going to do it because I don't have any on this device right now, but you can add a photo of, a duck blind, or you can add a photo of a wallow. I've taken a lot of times pictures when I harvest a deer. I take the classic grip and grin picture. I put a picture of me and the deer there. Then it becomes kind of a journal later on. I was just doing this earlier. I was kind of going back and looking at all my waypoints of spots where I've killed deer, and I put little notes in there of, shot it Friday morning at 8:30, yada, yada, yada. Just kind of fun to go back and do that. So I'm going to hit save right now. You can see there's my turkey gobbler. Probably not going to be strutting right in the middle of the street there in Missoula, but crazier things have happened. So that's one way to mark a waypoint. The second way is to use this mark my location button. That's the top center of that tool menu. Once I tapped that, you see there's a red X right on my blue location dot. Mark my location, just what it sounds like. It's going to put a waypoint where you are currently located. I use this 9 times out of 10 when I'm out in the field, because most of the stuff I want to mark is stuff that I find when I'm hiking, or, I use it when I park the truck, mark my location. I'll change that icon to a truck or to the P for parking sign. I'll do it when I set a tree stand, and then I, change it to the tree stand icon. Okay, so mark my location, and then of course, go back in, tap on the waypoint. That's going to pull up this information card, then hit the edit button, just like you saw before. Go change it, make it whatever you want it to be. A third way to mark a waypoint, and this one is one that I recently adopted. I honestly didn't use it very much when we first came out with it. I thought, man, that's not very useful. Once I started doing it, I use it a lot, is just by tapping on the map and holding my finger down for a couple seconds. I think it's 2 seconds you have to hold.
Yep. So less than 2 seconds, it'll query the map and give you the info for the spot. More than 2 seconds, it's going to create the waypoint.
Yep. So if you hold your finger down on the map, it's going to give you, the ability to mark a waypoint, just like we did. I'm just going to do that for now. We sometimes hear from folks that are like, man, I'm putting waypoints all over the place. I'm not meaning to. If you're just trying to query the map and you hold your finger down a little too long, now I can't get it to do it. There we go. If this happens to you and you're like, oh, I didn't want to mark that, you can either hit cancel in the top left corner, or I can just take my finger and swipe this menu down, and that's going to delete it. Okay.
Good thing to mention as well. That's actually how you close any menu within the app. So like back when we were in the map layers or the tools menu, when you want to exit those, just grab at the top and slide them off the bottom edge of your screen. Oftentimes iPhone users, since there's no back button, get a little bit stuck with those menus open.
Yep. Good call out there. We sometimes get people who can't get rid of that menu, and then they're operating with half a screen or something. All right. So that's kind of the 101 on waypoints there. We are going to do an onX deep dive, which is kind of a new series of classes we started this year specifically on waypoints. So if you want more information on waypoints, on organization, and some of the other tools we have within waypoints, we do have a masterclass coming up. It is on our masterclass page on the onX website. You can get signed up for that. We'll also be sending emails out and things like that. But get signed up for that if you're interested in learning more about waypoints. That will be early March, I believe. I have that scheduled for right now. Moving on, a couple other ones we'll talk about real quick here. The line distance tool. So this is how you can measure a distance, for example. You see when I open up the line distance tool, I now have a crosshair on my map. If I hit that button that says drop point, it's going to drop my first point right on the crosshair. Hit it again. Now I've got a line. You can drop as many as you want, if you want to not measure in a straight line. So this is useful for, if I want to see, hey, how far is it, as the crow flies to a certain area, or hey, how long is the perimeter of this property, or something like that. It's going to give you the distance, and then once you save it, it's going to give you that elevation profile as well. So that's kind of cool if you're in mountainous or hilly terrain, to say, hey, if I just went straight across, went down and back up this valley, What does that look like elevation gain and loss? You see, I did this one right in the middle of town. It's flat. Kind of nice to be able to see, ooh, man, we'd be dropping and gaining 1,500 feet of vert. Maybe we want to find a better route around a ridge line or something like that. So that's line distance tool very quickly. We're going to go over to area shape. It's very similar. Area shape, I'm going to drop some points just like I did with my line distance. But this tool's kind of cool because it's going to give me the total perimeter of that polygon as well as the acreage within it. So these are useful. A lot of land managers use these. If I'm planting food plots, I can go onto my onX map and I can kind of lay out my property and draw in the food plots. You can do this on the web map on your computer as well. We'll show you what the web map looks like in a little bit. That's how a lot of people do it, just the bigger screen is nice. So you can draw out, here are all my food plots. You can edit these just like you can waypoints. You can change the color, so you can make all your winter wheat one color. You can make your brassicas another color. You could do your burn areas, for example. You could do the same thing. But with a food plot, then you can say, all right, it's 3.8 acres. This is how much seed I need. This is how much fertilizer I need. If I'm spraying an herbicide or something, this is how much I need. Stuff like that. Same thing with burn area. You could say, all right, lay out all our different burn zones on the property and color code them because I'm going to burn these this year, these next year, these the year after, and then repeat or whatever your burn cycle is. So that's the area shape tool. Kind of neat for you folks that manage land. There's all kinds of different uses for it. Those are kind of the most common ones we hear. Moving over to the tracker. Tracker is one of those, I don't know if it's underutilized tool. I guess I use it probably more than most.
I definitely do too.
Especially if I'm hunting a new area, I turn my tracker on. I'm going to move the map back to my location. I'm going to take a drink of water here. I'm losing my voice. So you can see my blue dot on the map there. I'm going to turn on the tracker. I'm just going to hit this start button. Now you see it turns red. If I were moving, instead of sitting in an office building, that dot would move and you would see a breadcrumb trail laid on the map behind me wherever I traveled, wherever I drove, wherever I walked. The first thing that comes to mind for me with the tracker is safety, is why I use this. I use this so I don't get lost, so I can find my way back. So kind of I'm just going to stop this right now so it's not running because we're not going anywhere. My kind of order of operations when I get to a hunting area, especially if it's an area I haven't hunted before. If it's a spot I'm familiar with, I might not always do this. But I'm going to a new area. Let's say I'm going out for a September elk hunt. I've never been here before. I park my truck in the dark. I'm going to hit mark my location, put a waypoint on my truck. Then I'm going to start my tracker. And then everywhere I walk that morning or that day, if it's a full day hunt, I'm going to have a track of where I went. So useful for backtracking, for finding my way out of the woods at the end of the day. Of course, I could do that with just a waypoint, but having the track is another piece of information so that I can, hopefully not go through a bunch of deadfall or go where the going's a little bit tougher, go through a swamp or some real steep terrain. I can also use that track to lay out a walk into a deer stand. That's another way I use this is if I'm going to set a bunch of deer stands up, I'm going to park the ATV, mark the location. I may or may not mark the parking location, but I'm going to run that track. And then the nice thing is I have that track. Once I save it, I can share it with other people. All of these markups, your waypoints, lines, area shapes, and tracks, you can share with other people. So if I'm going hunting with Connor and let's say I've got a property and I've set up all of our deer stands, I can text him all of those waypoints. We'll show you what this looks like in a minute here. I can text him all of those waypoints of the stands, but maybe there's some of them where I want him to walk in a very specific way. Maybe it's, hey, walk this path so that you don't get upwind of the bedding area. Walk this area so that you don't go through waist deep water, things like that. The other, thing with a tracker, You could send it, hey, I got a buck down, I need help tracking, or I need help, maybe it's tracking, maybe it's packing out. Here's the track, here's how you get to me. To share a markup, whether it's a track or a waypoint or a line distance, whatever, I'm gonna tap on it. So tap on the track, tap on the waypoint. It's gonna bring up this menu here along the bottom. Along the very bottom of that, kind of in the bottom left-hand corner, it says share. Tap that. If I want to share more than just this waypoint, I can do that. So I could tap all of these different waypoints. You see they kind of get highlighted in white. If I want to share everything that's within this frame, I can tap select all in frame, and that's going to select everything that's on the map here. I'm going to deselect that right now. I don't want this. Close out. Oh, it's not going to let me share because some of these have been shared with me. So you can only share waypoints that you created. If I share something to Connor, he's not able to then go and share it with his buddies. Okay, I own it. So it's kind of like sharing a Google Doc and not giving permission to edit or anything like that. It's read only. So let's say I want to share these two waypoints. I hit the share button, tells me, hey, it's viewable, only viewable by the recipients. I'll tap share items. Then you can either text them, email them. You can share through Facebook, Slack, whatever you want. Most commonly, people text them. Connor's going to get a text message on his phone. It'll say, Jack Headland wants to share these with you. He'll accept. It'll open up his app. He'll see them there. The nice part is you don't have to have an onX membership to receive a share. So let's say, we commonly hear about people with, a spouse or a significant other. Hey, I've got the app and, my wife doesn't hunt. She wants to just know where I am so that I'm safe. You could send your spouse, significant other, parents, kids, whoever. They don't have to have the app, but you could send them a waypoint and say, hey, this is where I'm going to be hunting today, or this is where I plan to be. Here's where I'm going to park the truck. If you don't hear from me by X time, maybe come out and look for me or call somebody, make sure I'm safe. That's always a nice thing to have in case, God forbid, something should happen. At least somebody back home knows where you are and they know where to send the search and rescue or something like that. What am I forgetting on tools and sharing?
I think you're pretty much good there. There's more tools in the app than what we covered. Like we said earlier, though, just mess around with them, explore it, and try and figure those out. If you guys do run into questions with them, though, always feel free to reach out to us and we can run you through anything as well.
Yeah. All right, so we touched on it a little bit, but let's talk about finding your location and that location dot and some of the different things you can do there. So if I'm looking at the app and I don't see my blue location dot anywhere there, the quickest way to get back is in the lower right-hand corner. There's a button that looks kind of like a crosshair. Tap that. You see it now has turned blue, and the map pans back to my location and centers on my location. If you tap that and it gives you like a warning or a message that says every device is going to be a little bit different, but it'll say something like location services is disabled or you need to grant permission. You do have to grant the onX app permission within your phone settings to access your location. You don't do that, we're not able to show your location on the map because we don't know where you are. That's what kind of connects the GPS chip within your phone to the app. That's another question we get is, hey, can I see my location when I'm offline? Can I mark waypoints when I'm offline? All this stuff works because the GPS receiver in your phone works by connecting to the satellite system. It's not on the cell network. So when you're out in the middle of the wilderness, miles and miles away from cell service, you're still going to be able to see your location dot there. You're still going to be able to hit mark my location, all that stuff, because we don't utilize the cell tower network to find your location. It's the GPS satellites that place you on the map there. So I got my location showing here. I know there was one person who sent in a question, I remember reading it earlier, of, hey, how do I know what direction I'm facing or what direction I'm traveling? If I tap that blue location button one more time, again, in the lower right corner. You see now my map has spun around. That crosshair now looks like a kind of like a carrot or an arrow. I'm just going to grab my tablet here so you can see. As I rotate this around, you see my map is spinning as well. So whatever direction my tablet or phone is facing, that's what's going to be up on my map. So this is useful for, don't do it while you're physically driving. Maybe if you're the passenger in a car or in a boat, or while you're hiking, something like that, so that you can see what's on my right, what's on my left, without having to do, kind of that mental math of, all right, we're traveling south, so this is on the right and this is on the left. Here it's just what's ahead of us is ahead of us, what's on the right is on the right, etc. So I use this a lot to tell, all right, I got to go take this right fork of this trail. Or if I'm riding in a car, I've done it and seen, oh, hey, there's a bunch of elk over there. Is that public? Open up, go to heads up mode or compass mode, as we sometimes call this. Inevitably, it's probably not public, but it might be. So it's worth checking out. So that's how you move it to kind of line of sight being up on the map. If you want to get it back to north being up, just tap that button one more time and it swings you back. I mentioned a compass mode a few seconds ago. I want to talk about that. It's a pretty new feature. We released this last fall, right? It went live.
Yep.
So when I'm in this heads up mode, if we call it that, like 2 buttons above is what looks like a compass. If I tap that, now we're in what we call our compass mode. Along the top of my screen, you see the degrees, so you can kind of get a basic declination there. And then I have a bit of a grid extending out from my location dot. What's cool about this is if I again go back to the lower right-hand corner and I tap the button that looks like a rangefinder, now I'm in rangefinder mode. So what this allows you to do is place a waypoint on a distant object if you kind of know the distance to it. So classic example of this is I'm out mule deer hunting. I glass up a mule deer across a drainage or across a coulee, and I say 508 yards away. I point my phone at it. What I'm going to do now is I'm just tapping on this red line with my finger and I'm dragging it up. What did I say? 508 yards. I can leave it there and then tap the waypoint icon. And now I have a waypoint exactly where I ranged that mule deer. So now if I need to plan a stock, because let's say I'm archery hunting, I'm certainly not shooting 508 yards. I'm probably not going to be able to walk right at that mule deer. Either it's going to see me or the terrain isn't conducive to a stock. I need to make kind of my way around to it. Maybe I need to loop way around. At least I have a waypoint so that I have a spot to reference so that I know, maybe it's going to take me 20 minutes, half hour to get over there, whatever it is. I know this is where he was bedded so that I can come at it from a different direction. Also useful after a shot. Let's say I mark it at 508 yards. Let's say I'm rifle hunting, calm conditions. I'm practiced with my equipment. That's a shot I can make. Whatever is ethical for you is up for you to decide. Some people say 500 is too far. Some people perfectly within their ethical distance. Okay. Let's say I take that shot, buck runs out of sight. Now I have a waypoint to start blood tracking from. So that can be super useful for a situation like that. Anything I'm forgetting on rangefinder?
I think you're pretty good.
Awesome. I love this feature, by the way, because I used to do this with the line distance tool, and I used to range something and then put a dot of the line distance on my location and then kind of try to get that line distance just right and get that spot on there. And it worked. It helped one time for tracking a bear at night. It led us to within 50 yards of the bear. I've done this. I did it with a deer last year. It was like 270 yards. Right on the spot. It was super slick. I really think it's a cool feature. So take a look at that when you get a chance. I am going to stop sharing on my tablet right now. I'm going to show you guys the onX web map. Just give me one moment to pull that up. Okay. So what I'm going to show you now is the onX web map. Now this comes with your account. This comes with, it's not a separate membership or anything like that. But this is where I do most of my scouting, is on my computer because it's a bigger screen. To get here, all you have to do is go to onxmaps.com and log in. Use the same email address and password that you used on your mobile device or wherever you set up your account. It's going to bring you a map. Looks just like it did on my tablet, except it's a lot bigger. You see I've got my waypoints here. Those automatically transfer back and forth. So anything I do markup wise on my tablet or my phone, it's going to show up on my computer and vice versa. I can mark a whole bunch of waypoints here. I can plan out a hunt and say, I want to park here. I want to glass from these 4 different glassing spots. When I pull up my phone or my tablet, they're all going to be there for me. So the second reason I pulled this up is because I want to talk about our base maps, and it's a little easier to see on the computer screen like this. So whether you're on a mobile device or on your computer, in the lower right-hand corner, you're going to see a button that looks something like this. Again, if you follow my cursor down there, mine says SAT 2D. If I click on that, that opens up my base map button. I have 3 different base maps to choose from. I have satellite, hybrid, and topo. So that satellite map is what we should, we're all probably familiar with. Your basic satellite imagery, whether you're used to using Google Earth or any other type of mapping application, satellite imagery, right? Shows you the conditions on the ground there. I can zoom in pretty close. And once I get really close, it starts to get a bit blurry. The topo map, topographical map, if you're used to using paper maps, you're probably familiar with something like this, especially if you're, in the western half of the United States. These seem to be a bit more prevalent. That's going to show you the contour lines, show you the elevation. So you can see 4,400 feet, 4,600 feet, and then the ones in between there. I use this a lot when I'm scouting for spring bear to identify south-facing slopes. I also use it when I'm scouting for elk to try to find benches or flatter areas surrounded by those steeper areas, places where elk might like to bed down in the middle of the day, especially on a cool north-facing slope. What I use probably 90% of the time, though, is the hybrid, because it gives me both. For me, it's the best of both worlds. I get the satellite imagery. I also get the contours. For some people, this is a bit too much, and they like to just use the satellite because it's a little too much noise with those lines there. Whatever works for you, whatever makes the most sense. Again, I do use all 3. Most of the time I use the hybrid because I'm able to still see the terrain along with those contours. And again, you can do this on your mobile device as well. You just got to tap in the lower right-hand corner there. And if you save a map for offline use on your mobile device, all 3 of these are saved on that offline map. That's a question we get sometimes is, hey, do I have to pick my base map for offline use? Nope. Whatever you want to use when you're out there, it's the same as when you're online. You just go in and tap through, and you've got your 3 different maps there. A couple other options for imagery that we've recently released. Now, these 2 options that we're going to talk about are elite only, so you do have to have an elite membership to have access to these. But one is the recent imagery. So if I zoom out a little bit, and let me get to a better area here. So you can see I've got some snow on my map here. I can toggle this off and on. Recent imagery is taken in 2-week chunks. So you can see along the bottom of my screen, might be cut off on your side. I'm not sure if you can see that, but it says January 22nd to February 5th. That's when that image was taken, somewhere in that 2-week span. And we have this throughout the entire nation. So you can take a look at your area. I can also click this back arrow, and I can go back in 2-week increments. And you can see how the snow is kind of changing there. Man, we had snow early in here. Now I'm back to October, there's no snow. I go forward 2 weeks, you can see when we got some snow. You can go all the way back to, I believe it's April or March of last year. So we're coming up on a year since we released this feature. So you're going to be able to go back as long as we have imagery. So again, March or April of 2023, and we're going to keep every 2 weeks, keep updating this. So some use cases for this. I know I talk a lot about spring bear, but it's one of my favorite things to do. Checking snow levels in the spring to see, hey, can I get into this area or is there too much snow? Obviously, you can do that in the fall if you got a snowstorm to say, hey, what's the snow level at? What elevation is it at? Upland guys in the Great Plains have used this to check, hey, I'm going to South Dakota pheasant hunting. What do the crops look like? Have the crops been taken out or is it all still standing corn? Check water levels for waterfowl hunting. A lot of different uses for it. Should mention, it isn't as high resolution as our regular imagery is. That's the trade-off. You know, our regular imagery is largely taken by flights with airplanes. This is all through satellites. So the picture is not as crisp. It's not meant to be a replacement for our regular base map imagery. It's meant to be just another resource to use in addition to our regular imagery. So that's something, if you find use for it, great. If not, leave it turned off.
One good thing to mention with these two imagery options as well, they are not included when you're saving offline maps. So you do have to have service to use both the recent imagery and then the one we're about to cover, leaf off imagery.
Yeah. So these two imagery, the recent imagery and the leaf off, are, I think of them more as scouting tools versus in the field tools. That's part of the reason I'm showing you them on the web map here. So let's get over to Wisconsin to demo leaf off imagery. I'm going to zoom in a bit here so you can get a sense of what this looks like. So we heard from a lot of people that said, man, I need a winter image. I need an image with the leaves off of the trees so I can tell what's going on. We have this now for, I believe it's 15 states.
I believe so.
14 or 15 states, primarily east of the Mississippi. Of course, the areas with the highest density of deciduous trees. So if I kind of zoom in here, I'm going to toggle this off. So there's our regular base map imagery. There's leaf off. You can see quite the change there. Pretty cool to tell. You know, you can tell the difference between, let me see if I can find some evergreen trees here. You know, I should probably just save a waypoint on here. It's not evergreen trees. Anyway, if there were evergreen trees here, it'd be really cool to see the difference between the deciduous and the evergreens. It's not really why we got it though. If I zoom in here, you can see how much more information I can kind of see of on the ground. You can kind of see some of the trails. You can see where there are little ponds in there that are otherwise obscured by the foliage. So again, you do have to have an elite membership. This type of imagery is expensive to acquire, both of these. So that's kind of the reasoning for that decision. And if you're in a state where we don't have it, like we don't have it for Minnesota, I'm going to zoom over there real quickly. You're going to get an image that looks like this. It'll say no leaf off imagery available. We are looking to add additional states. So if your state isn't covered right now, we are looking to add more this year. It is a little bit dependent on which states have that imagery available. It's not available in every state, I don't believe, but we are working to add more. So if you don't have it, just hang tight. Hopefully we'll be able to get your state. Anything else on imagery, base maps?
That's pretty good. I would say that leaf off imagery is mostly aerial. It's taken with planes. So that is going to be fairly high resolution imagery across most of where it's covered.
Yep, that's a good point. All right, how are we doing on time? Just over an hour here.
I'm doing pretty good.
Next thing I want to talk about, and we'll kind of wrap up with this before we get to Q&A, is the search function. So on my web map here, you see I've got a search bar in the top left corner. On your mobile device, it's going to be in the upper right-hand corner. It's going to look like that magnifying glass icon. Tap there, that's going to open up the search bar for you. So one of the common questions we get is, hey, can I Can I search for GPS coordinates? Can I mark a waypoint off GPS coordinates? Yes, you can. Go into search, make sure location is selected. You can also search by private land, landowner name. We'll get to that in a minute. But to search, if you have some GPS coordinates, latitude, longitude, you have to have location selected. Most commonly, you're going to just copy and paste it into here. If you're not copying and pasting, you can certainly type it in. I'm just going to type in my usual example here. So you're going to have two numbers. We recommend using decimal. You got your latitude and your longitude. Your second number here has to be a negative. If you put it as a positive 100, that's going to put you in the Eastern Hemisphere. You're going to end up in like Europe or Central Asia or something somewhere. I should test that out sometime. But I've got this typed in here. Your first one's got to be a positive. That's Northern Hemisphere. Second one, negative. That's Western. I used to be a geography teacher. This is bringing me back. My result down here, I'm going to click on this. That's going to bring me over to, it's near Gettysburg, South Dakota. I've done this one a few times. And then I've got this little eye icon here. I've already added a waypoint to this spot, but you can just hit add waypoint from the menu here and put a waypoint on that spot. Again, if you're getting a coordinate from a buddy or from another app, copy and paste it right in there, click the result. It's going to bring the map there. Hit OK. If you want to send coordinates to somebody while we're on the topic, you can query the map. Here's your coordinates, hit copy, and then text away or email them or do whatever you need to.
Do that all the time when trying to get help with pack outs.
Yeah.
Send the coordinates to a friend. They know exactly where they're going in the woods without any other information needed.
Yep. Yeah. If you don't want to send a waypoint or something, you can just send those coordinates and they can pull it up on their side. Easy peasy. Second thing to search for, if I move my map back to Montana, you can also search for a landmark. You know, I could search for Glacier National Park. And click on it. It's going to bring me up to Glacier there. You can search for towns, national parks. You can search for lakes, counties, any kind of landmark. You can use that location search. It's going to give you a bunch of different options. You might have to sort through those to find the applicable one. Let's talk private land here. If I click over to private land, I'm just going to clear my recent searches out. When you're searching for a private landowner, the more information you can give the tool here, the better. So if I'm looking for Smith, there's a lot of people with the last name Smith, right? It's only going to give me the top 50 results. If I'm looking for Mark Smith, I'm just pulling names out here. Hit search. There's still 50 results, but at least I'm closer, right? If you know Mark Smith's middle name or his wife or something like that, again, the more information you can give it, the better. You'll also notice all of my results here. Oop, didn't mean to do that, but you'll notice my results here are all in Flathead County, Montana, and then other counties in Montana. The search is going to prioritize results near where you are looking. So if I'm looking at Montana, it's going to prioritize results in Montana. If I'm looking for a Mark Smith in Georgia, I'm going to move my map to Georgia, and then I'm going to perform that search. It's going to prioritize whatever's closest there. If I know what town the person lives in, try to zoom in on the town. Okay, that's going to get you the best results. And then from here again, click on the result, and that'll bring you to that private parcel there.
One thing to add to that, if you want to open up your search again.
Sure.
This is something relatively new, and I've started using it more recently. So if you just put in like Mark Smith again.
There's a Mark Smith out there. I'm sorry. We're not trying to dox you or anything.
Click enter, and it's going to give you the results off of where you're looking at the map. Now, if that's not the right area, and let's say, okay, it's not popping up with the one I want, and you just panned the map over at the top of your screen, and it'll pop up that little white rectangle that says search this area. All that does is it's resetting that location search. to whatever's visible on your screen. So when I'm searching for owners where I have no idea where they're at, but I know they're in a certain portion of the state, that can really help me filter down and get a lot more accurate results. Just saves a bit of time on doing the search.
I didn't even know about that.
Yeah, it's relatively new. That came out sometime this summer.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'm going to stop sharing here. I'm going to ask Eli to post the giveaway link in the chat if he hasn't done so already. Let me share my screen here one more time. We're giving away some onX Hunt bandanas today. These things are pretty nice and soft. You can use them as like lens wipes and glasses cleaners and things like that. Or my favorite use for them, when you're packing out that big buck or bull, you hang the orange bandana from the rack so that nobody mistakes you for a live game animal and you can get out safe. Doesn't happen to me very often, but
Me neither.
a guy can dream. So we got that link in the chat. Again, if you're watching this video after tonight, February 15th, the giveaway has closed. It closes at midnight tonight. I'll send an email to all the winners tomorrow, and then I'll also get your bandana sent out. So customer support doesn't know who won, so they sometimes get emails. Did I win? Did I win? I'll let all the winners know tomorrow. If you don't hear from me, sorry you didn't win, but we do these at just about every class. So the more you attend, the more chances you have to win. Do want to give a discount offer to anybody who doesn't have a current membership. You can use the promo code app101 to save 30% off your first year of a premium or elite membership. You can go to that website there. Maybe Eli can throw that in the chat as well. That will take you to our website. It's on the sheet I sent you, Eli. If not, copy and paste it on here, folks. Has to be used on our website. Can't be used on the iTunes App Store or the Google Play Store. They don't accept discounts. They'll charge you full price. So if you do have any trouble applying that discount code, can email us or give us a call. We'll get it applied for you. Again, first year of premium or elite membership. So that's for the new folks there. Couple other ways to learn if you want more information. Our website's a fantastic resource. Our tutorials there, our frequently asked questions. We've got different videos and all kinds of different stuff that'll walk you through a lot of topics within the app. Same with our YouTube channel. We have a bunch of short videos there showing different aspects of the app and different tools within it, showing you how to use that. Mention customer support. Again, their email is help@onxmaps.com. We've got a whole team of folks ready to answer your questions, ready to get you started, get you set up. And then, of course, future masterclasses. We've got some cool ones coming up. We talked about the Hunt Research Tools Masterclass. That's coming up next week. We do a series of classes every winter, spring with the folks from Hunt and Fool. So if you're a person who is interested in hunting out of state, out in the West, applying for mule deer, elk, antelope tags, they break down all of those different drawings so that you can kind of make sense of how the states differ, when the deadlines are, the costs associated with applying, how bonus points and preference points and all that stuff works. So we've got a few more of those coming up with them this year. And then if you're looking to get beyond the onX 101, those onX deep dives, we're going to try to do those about every month. Those are going to be about half hour to 45 minute classes. They're going to be more of a deep dive, like the name says, into a very narrow topic. So we covered a lot of stuff today. We didn't go super deep into anything. This is where we're going to cover one thing, and we're going to cover it top to bottom, inside and out. Our next one is on waypoints. You can go to that website there or Google onX Hunt Masterclasses. You can find our landing page there. All the future classes that we have scheduled out are listed there, so you can get signed up for that. Even if you can't attend a class, you can still sign up for it, and we'll email you the recording afterwards. So if there's something you're interested in, but you have something going on that night and you can't attend, go ahead and register anyway. And then the day after the class, you'll get the recording so you can watch it on YouTube whenever you have the time. All right, let's get into some Q&A here. I'm going to stop sharing and pull up my Q&A document. See, there was a question on sharing tracks or waypoints. We covered that. So again, to share something, all you have to do is tap on it and then hit the share button and send a text or an email. Question about maximizing battery life. That's a great question. If you're going on an extended hunt and you're worried about your phone dying, losing your battery, first thing I would recommend is carry an external power source, carry a power bank. I always have one with me, at least one. Sometimes I carry multiple. They're pretty ubiquitous now. I see them on sale at the grocery store or Target or Amazon or wherever. Carry one of those with you so that you have some extra juice. But then the other thing I do is I put my phone into airplane mode. That's the biggest thing you can do to extend the battery life on your device. Putting it into airplane mode means it's not searching for cell signal. Again, you're still going to be able to utilize those offline maps. You're still going to be able to see your location, but it's not pinging the cell tower. That's one of the biggest drains on your phone. So put it into airplane mode, utilize your offline maps. And then if you're really worried, kind of be stingy with how often you pull your phone out. I know I work for an app company. I don't want you to use your app when you're out hunting, but your screen is going to drain your battery. So the more you can not use your screen and turn that on, the more that's going to extend your battery life.
And to tie in one other question we had about how the tracker affects battery life, that is using your location a lot more than if you weren't using it. So it is going to drain on your battery life a little bit. It is nowhere near as bad as if you weren't in airplane mode. That like attempt to look for signal that your phone's doing is going to drain your battery a lot faster. I can do full day hunts on a battery with tracker running all day. Really no concern there as long as you are in airplane mode.
Here's a question. How do I keep the screen open while driving? I'm actually going to demo this because this is a relatively new feature as well. So I'm going to pull up the map on my tablet here. Going to be the same on a phone. So let me close out of this. In the top left corner, there is what's called a hamburger menu. It's those 3 horizontal lines way in the top left. I'm going to tap that. It's going to bring up this kind of account management type screen. I'm going to tap where it says settings, 3rd one down. Then in there, there's a setting. If you scroll down towards the bottom, it says keep screen always on. I just turned that on. That is going to prevent the phone from going to sleep while you have onX pulled up. Now, do make sure if you are trying to save battery life that you manually, put your phone to sleep so that this doesn't, just stay on. I'd hate to have you have this turned on, put your phone in your pocket, and then your screen's on the whole time while you're out hunting, and then your battery dies. So I do use this again, if I'm driving or something like that, I'll turn it on like that. But otherwise, I don't want to, when I'm out hunting, I turn that off just because I don't want to risk forgetting to turn my phone off and draining my battery.
One thing to add with that, and I may be wrong on this, but I do not believe that is an option on Android devices at this moment. If you're on an Android and that isn't there, typically what I recommend is going into the actual settings for your phone. Under display, you can lengthen the timeout when your screen's going to go to sleep. Most Androids, like Samsung's, you can bump that out as far as like 10 minutes. So you can keep it on for an extended period of time without having to interact with it at all.
Good point. Are all layers automatically downloaded to an offline map or only the ones that are selected at the time of the download? So with some exceptions, all layers are downloaded. You don't have to have them turned on. There are some like the precipitation radar, like I believe the forest visitor maps, active wildfires. So those ones that are kind of time specific, especially like precipitation radar is changing all the time. That can't be downloaded for offline use because we have to ping the cell tower to render that layer to show you where the precipitation is or where the current wildfires are. But any of your state layers, your property boundaries, things like that, whether they're turned on or off, they're saved for offline use when you save that map. When using the offline map, is the accuracy of your actual GPS just as accurate? I think what they're getting at there is my location dot on my map as accurate when I'm offline as it is when I'm online? Yes. It's going to be just as accurate. It still is finding your location the same way. I think civilians, or what's the accuracy on civilian GPS devices? It's,
Typically 5 to 10 feet is going to be pretty normal.
yeah, 5 to 10 feet is kind of what the civilian market's allowed, whether it's a phone or an actual handheld GPS device. So that doesn't matter whether you're online or off. What does the possible access layer represent? So we touched on this earlier. We'll go over it one more time. Possible access is private land that may be open to public access. So again, those are typically going to be groups like the Nature Conservancy or a local land trust, or most commonly timber companies. So it's private land, it's not public, but they often do allow public access. Make sure you do your homework. Make sure you double check, if it's Weyerhaeuser, timberland, for example, check with them, see if they have certain rules and regulations, see if they charge like a day fee or a season fee to use it. So do your homework before you go, but those are often great opportunities to get out.
Yeah, in my experience with those, if you just search the company name on Google, it's pretty quick to find a link on their site to that.
Yeah.
It's stuff they're really familiar with, so they're going to make it really upfront and easy to find for you.
And quite often your state game and fish department, a lot of times they'll have like some agreements with those entities as well. So you might check their website. That's another good source. All right, I think our last one here. When you're using offline maps and have no cell signal, does your position move when you move? Can you use breadcrumbs? Can you leave waypoints? Yes. The app as a whole functions very similar when you're offline as it does when you're online. There's a few things you can't do. Some of those layers we talked about, some of those imagery options. But when you move, you're going to move on the map. You can use the tracker, you can mark waypoints, you can do all that stuff. Again, because your GPS chip in your device doesn't rely on the cell network, it connects to the satellites orbiting the globe. Awesome. I didn't realize I was still sharing on there. Anything else tonight?
I think that's it. I can't think of anything.
Awesome. Want to thank everybody one more time for joining us tonight. Hopefully you learned something. If you want to learn more, again, check out our future master classes. Shoot us an email. Get entered for that giveaway. You got until midnight tonight. And with that, I guess we'll see you on the next one.